Attention. Welcome to the Different Spectrums podcast. We dive into the wild world of mental health discussions. Get ready for profound talks, a sprinkle of humor and sarcasm, and a touch of colorful language. Just a quick heads up, our show reflects our individual opinions, which may not align with the standpoint of the podcast, our featured guests, or any related corporate entities. Our mission? To illuminate through laughter and satire because everyone needs a good chuckle. Chill out and don't stress over the small stuff. Legal troubles? No, thank you. Cancel culture? Please spare us. We'd rather keep this space lawsuit free. So buckle up, have a good time, and join us as we navigate the vibrant realm of mental health on the Different Spectrums podcast. Today's episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist who is trained to listen and give you helpful, unbiased advice. By using our link, you can get 10% off your first month of therapy. So, Naz, as a therapist on BetterHelp, what has your experience been like?
I've been doing it since January of 2021, and it's been really fun and exciting. I've been able to reach clients all over the United States and the world. I've had good relationships. I've had folks that I've had for a couple months and a good handful where I've had for almost 2 years now. So it's magnificent. I've enjoyed my time and my clients. I love them.
Awesome. You can do it all from your phone or computer via phone call, video chat, or messaging, however you feel the most comfortable. Let BetterHelp connect you to a therapist who can support you all from the comfort of your own home. Visit betterhelp.com/DSP or choose Different Spectrums podcast during sign up and enjoy a special discount on your first month. Right. Hey, everybody, we back again.
Hey, we're back. We're live.
I'm Spencer, and of course, that's our licensed clinical therapist, Naz.
Dr. Nas. Certified
All right.
nonprofit.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm
Still
gonna keep going.
Yep,
Give me the
you're still
microphone.
going.
Yeah.
That was a long pause. Okay, my bad. Long
I was
pause
trying to do my
there.
Obama.
He says, all right, whatever.
Whatever.
Not getting into it. Remember, don't take us too seriously.
Or do. It's completely up to you.
There you go. Also, don't forget to run up those likes for us. We'd really appreciate it. So, today, before we get into it, we have a special guest for the show. He is an accomplished visual storyteller with over 20 years of filmmaking and documentaries, including the one that we are covering today. He has also worked with clients ranging from small businesses to Oscar-winning movie stars. Please welcome to the show, Erik Linthorst.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. 20 years.
Nice to have you.
Man, you don't look, how old are you, man? God damn.
Do I gotta say? Well, guess. What do you think?
You're a young 25.
Yeah, 25. Is that an old 25?
Next month I turn 53.
Damn,
Looking
what?
good.
That's crazy.
Looking good, man.
Yeah.
It's the filter. I got layers of filter going on.
It's
Layers
that
of
cocoa
filter.
butter.
It's the
Feel
cocoa butter. It's the LA
cocoa
sun. Yeah.
Hey. All right. Anyways, thank you for joining us today. So today we're actually covering a film that you've directed called Autism Goes to College. Some topics that we are going to be covering is participation. We're going to be talking about understanding, finding out when someone's autistic and what that even means and how people react to that. We're also going to be talking about violence and some other great topics. So before we get into it, Naz, anything?
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about a couple different things. A couple of really good stories of students that I've worked with in the past. As you all know, I've been working at the university level. Sponsored Dr. Pepper. You see that, you know? Yeah, Dr. Pepper. But as you know, I've been working at the university, right, for 9 years. So there's a couple very relatable stories when I seen this. I'm not gonna lie, Erik, when I seen him getting blowing up and getting in trouble, I was like, bro, I felt that. I was in the damn classroom crying. Because I've been in that situation. I've been looked at as a monster, being big and brown like he is, right? And you're raging out, and you know it's a tough situation to be in, man. But people push your buttons, and they don't know that you've got a certain limit. So we're going to talk about that and what happens when you say certain trigger words that alert a lot of people, whether it be harm to others harm to self. We're going to talk about medication. We're going to talk about the education system in general and universal design, that's what it's called. So I'm excited. Let's get into it. Let's have some fun. Whoop, whoop.
Whoop, whoop.
Here's a little whoop.
Whoop whoop.
There it is.
There you go.
Whoop,
There
there it
you
is.
go. You got it. You got it.
Nice.
I went to college without a real idea on what I was going to be. I just knew, go to college because that's where you can get a job. What job? Well, that's something you have to figure out, Guillermo.
I decided to go to a community college so that could give me a bit more time to help me prepare for a more bigger college-oriented environment.
Usually right after class on Monday and Wednesday, rush over to work. I love the fast pace of that restaurant. It doesn't get boring.
Throughout my whole life, it's been hard figuring out how I was going to be able to succeed as much as my peers and compare to them.
Having autism spectrum, I've had to kind of just put in an extreme work ethic, and that's become one of my strongest traits. So I don't see it as a negative thing, I see it as a positive thing.
I always disclosed with my professors because I felt like if I didn't say, then I wouldn't be able to do as well. So as long as I'm saying what my needs are, then I know I'll at least have at least that met.
We don't have excellent statistics on how many individuals with an autism spectrum disorder are at college, but the estimate is about 2% nationwide.
My university was about 2.5 hours away from my hometown, which is the perfect distance because it's too far for, pop in, but close enough that if you get in trouble, your parents can come. My dad drove me to the dorm, helped me unpack, and once everything was done, he's like, all right, cool, see ya. And that was the start of my adult life.
I'll say I have to show a little bit more patience sometimes with him and a lot of humor. I have to understand that sometimes when he says things out loud or might stand up in the middle of a lecture, like literally.
It was all, that's not what you said.
Okay. Here we go. And phones ring, go. Last week, I was giving a lecture and I look over and there's Jonathan. He's standing right beside me and he was about to share something with me, but it turned out it was part of my lecture now because he was sharing it with the class. It was when we were talking about the Disney Imagineering and he wanted to tell me the 6 other Imagineers' names and what dates that they were working and so it was great because I said, okay, there it is. And, I just have to be flexible and adapt to that because, I could take another approach and say, this is not appropriate, sit down and kind of kill the flow of my lecture as opposed to, all right, let's see what's happening here and go with it. I think it was a shock to some students seeing this student that was moving around when everyone else was sitting or calling out things when everyone else was just listening. So I think it was a learning process for them as well, because maybe there was some students that weren't as patient or felt it was affecting their learning at times. This was the first time Jonathan stood up and said they're doing a documentary about me on autism. And I saw some students kind of sit up a little bit and say, oh, that's what's going on. And it was almost like there was this acceptance and like, arms kind of wrapping around him metaphorically a little bit, and people, you could see the posture change a little bit. So, given that, I would wonder if it's a better thing at the start of a class to have the knowledge, just so people can be accepting a little bit more and change their point of view a little bit on it, especially at the Cal State system. Such a mix here, and a lot of our students are first in their family to go to college, so everyone has a different background and different culture. It's amazing to see how quickly they can accept each other and each other's stories.
Okay, so basically this all starts with the professor. During one of the meetings I had with the person I talked to for counseling at the Disability Services offices, she decided to go in there to tell him, Guillermo asks too many questions in class, he's disrupting the flow, you need to tell him from you. I tried to tell him, but he won't listen to me, so maybe he'll listen to you. So she sat in one of the meetings, which I thought was insane, honestly. Like, why are you doing this? Like, first off, I thought it's your job to answer questions. You're a professor, you're supposed to like questions and things like that, and disrupt the flow of the class. It's like, I don't understand. And this is also the day of her midterm. So now I have this feeling of, I'm gonna do good on this midterm, I'm gonna show you that my questions are due, I'm gonna make you eat your words. Midterm comes back, I fail it. It is rough. Then I think, okay, maybe other people failed it. Maybe I'm not the only one. Turns out almost everyone was getting perfect scores. I am loaded right now. I am mad. I'm a powder keg, and something is gonna spark. And then I go up to someone in the class, and I ask them a basically loaded question. No, it's two people. The question was, do you think I ask too many questions and disrupt the flow of class? The first guy was trying to tell it to me nicely. The second guy cut him off very rudely and told me, yes, you do, in a tone that's just really mean-spirited. Honest, but really mean-spirited. And so I told him, like I said, powder keg, spark, it blew. And basically, I basically told him I was gonna shoot him, because what's the worst thing you could say nowadays? You want to scare him. You want to tell him that you're going to eat his words. You want him to be scared of you. Know that you're not dealing with just some idiot. I apologized right afterwards and ran to the counseling office, but the damage was already done. And so I guess he did what any normal student would do, basically told on me.
Let's face it, there's school shootings out there. Having to tell everyone, oh no, he's harmless, would not have been sufficient.
That is not acceptable for a person to say that, but it's uncontrollable situation for this kind of people, And then I went to special services because my son was crying in there and feeling guilty and said, what am I gonna do? So thanks to the special services, they made the arrangement that he could take this subject online.
My mom says it was both a curse but also a blessing, because they referred me to a psychiatrist on campus who gave me medicine, and that medicine basically completely changed me. So in a sense, the medicine just keeps me somewhat stable. It lowers my feelings of outbursts in a sense, so I don't really have any massive anger happening.
Hey everyone, I'm here to talk about our new collaborator, Toink Toys. They have a wide selection of, you guessed it, toys and other great collectibles. They have products from Marvel, Star Wars, Harry Potter, and everything pop culture. You could say they put the toy in Toink. So go check them out at toink.com and use our code Different Spectrums Podcast to get 10% off your entire order today.
And we are back again.
We're back and we're live. Just as live as the TISM in universities. So let's talk about that. Because
okay.
TISM
wow,
is
great
for
segue
real.
there.
Segue.
Jackass.
I know.
Wow. Okay.
I'm going to talk about
Erik,
my gout.
Erik, welcome to the show. Thank you for being on here and talking about your movie. Um, so, Autism Goes to College. What made you want to talk about these stories, especially autism? It is a big topic nowadays, but would love to get to know, like, why did you pick this topic to really talk about?
Well, this isn't actually my first autism film. My first autism film was the story of my son and his diagnosis and trying to
Oh,
figure out, as a parent, you know, how to help my child who was falling off the developmental ladder and was very young. And so that film, which is called Autistic Like Graham's Story, came out in 2008, I think.
Mhm.
Um, and it was a grassroots type of film. I self-financed it because I knew that nobody finances autism movies, and I knew that there was a lot of other families probably going through what we were going through. And I happened to be a filmmaker, and I happened to have a camera, so I just sort of filmed doctors' visits and interviewed the doctors that we were going to, and then cut together a film from that really told the story of our search to find help for my son. And so that got me into this world. And I spent about 2 years actually traveling with that film to special needs conferences, early education conferences,
yep.
all over the world. And really speaking mostly to parents about sort of parent advocacy, encouraging parents not to take the first answer you get from your pediatrician, to trust their gut. If the diagnosis doesn't seem right, or if you're getting told that everything's fine and it's not, push through that. If the first therapy you're given doesn't gel with you, push through that. So really sort of a parent empowerment piece to say, your child best, be an advocate and get out there. And so I connected with a lot of parents, sort of built a small community. So when the professor at UC Riverside, Dr. Jan Blatcher, who is a professor on campus back in sort of 2015, 2016, was noticing this sort of surge in neurodiversity on her campus, she had the question in her mind, what's going on here? Is the university meeting their needs? If not, what's being done? Where are the gaps? So she had been using my film about my son in her classrooms for 10 years or 8 years or something, and was a fan. And so she reached out to me and said, hey, what do you think about doing a film about autism in college? And I said, you can raise the budget, I'll make your movie, thinking that I'd never hear from her again, because again, nobody finances autism movies. And she's a very resourceful woman, and she does not take no for an answer. And she called me a year later, and she's like, I have not a lot of money, but I've got a little money. Can we get started? And so we shot a couple days, cut something together, used that to sort of raise a little bit more money, shot a few more days, and we kind of made the films in that manner, kind of piecemeal, until we had enough sort of stories and enough kind of interesting themes that we felt like we had a movie and we could put it out.
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah. So kind of going back a little bit, I mean, when you first heard that, your kid had autism, what was like your first reaction to that?
I mean, you're devastated as a parent because at the time, especially, this was back in 2000. He was born in 2003, so this was like 2005. Your only reference point for autism is, Rain Man or some kind
I knew he was
of,
going to say it.
Yeah.
stereotype,
It's always
right?
Rain Man.
And
Yeah.
so, you have this expectation, you got this baby, and you're like, oh, he's gonna, drive a car and get married and go to college and have kids, and then suddenly, according to the sort of the stereotype, all those things are off the table, and you don't know if your kid's going to talk. And so it's really tough as a parent. It's devastating, but it's not. But it's a good thing in a certain way, because what I've learned, going through the whole journey with my son, is that every parent struggles with the same things. It doesn't matter how popular your kid is, how good they are in sports. It's like it's never enough, right? You still are like think that you don't fit in, and you so it's sort of like to rip the Band-Aid off of all that expectation real early is actually kind of a healthy thing as a parent. And then you actually build a relationship with your child, like for who your child is. And then when they do, exceed, your early, expectations, it's just sort of gravy. But it's really difficult. And so we obviously, especially because I made a movie about it, then we kind of became the mentors to parents that came after us. And particularly around the therapy thing, one of the themes of the first film, and one of the things I became kind of really passionate about was the type of therapy that kids get when they're really young. We're in California, so the state will pay for ABA. But I spent about 2 minutes with ABA and I was like, I don't like this with my kid. Like, other families swore by it, whatever the science said, fine, doesn't sit right with me. And so I went on a search to find a therapy that I was comfortable with. And that took me to some pretty interesting places, one of which was this place in Sheffield, Massachusetts, called the Option Institute. It's actually the Sunrise program. It's a group of parents two parents that used a play-based, child-led approach, actually joining their child in their stimming as a way of connecting and building a bridge. And then once you have that relationship, you slowly start to expand the circle of interest or the circle of activity. And just the respect that approach showed to the kid resonated so deeply with me. I didn't care if there wasn't science around it. I didn't care if our therapist out here thought I was nuts. This is what we were going to do. We actually wound up finding kind of a hybrid approach in something called Floor Time that had sort of an eminent academic behind it, Dr. Stanley Greenspan, and preserved that kind of child-led, play-based approach, but also brought in some neuroscience and understandings. So we wound up doing more of a Floor Time program, but influenced and informed by the Sunrise program. And we just did that. We just got down on the floor and played with my son like 40 hours a week. We had play therapists cycling through the house to come and just, stimulate his brain, but doing the things that he wanted to do in the ways that he wanted to do it, but just having that relationship factor really early on. And I think that's really made a huge difference in our trajectory with our son.
Fuck, man, that was almost got me crying. Shit. Hey, man, damn, that's a good dad right there, boy. You can't even get some dads to do a damn thing.
Well, so when I was traveling with my film, at the end of the screening, there would be a line of moms.
Yeah.
And every mom would say the same thing to me. How do I get my husband on board? He doesn't think there's anything going on with he said, I was a late talker, blah, 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 blah. He can't handle the fact that his boy might not be the carbon copy or better at sports or better with girls or whatever he thinks is going on. He can't take it emotionally. He has no tools. So he just goes, no, it's fine. And then when you get a little older and they see their kid struggling, then it's like, okay, well now, but that's why they get divorced and you get all this kind of stuff. So what I kept getting was, will you talk to my husband? How do I get him to be engaged in the way that you're engaged? And look, there's no simple answer. It's a tough thing. It was a tough thing for me as a man with my firstborn son. But this is what life is about, right? Things that happen to you, if you approach them in the right way, are happening for you, for your own growth, for your own betterment. And that's a tough thing to get through to some people.
Preach. And I don't want this to come out weird, but it ain't just dads. Some of them moms too, I've had moms call me on the phone after I'm like, hey, I'm pretty sure your kid's autistic. Like, I'm going to move forward with this formal diagnosis. Like, Nas, is he ever going to be happy? I'm like, I'm pretty sure he's happy right now. Is he ever going to have a girlfriend? I don't know. I don't actually think he wants any girls, but I can get back to you and let you know. Well, is he going to have a job? Well, I mean, the boy's about to graduate. What the hell do you mean? In engineering, he's going to have a job, Susan. It's just interesting because she told me, and I get it and empathize. the picture that they saw for their child is now morphed, right? It was this, and this, and now it has to be modified. And it people internalize that as that they did something wrong, or it was their genetics, or the old myth is that it was the unloving mothers that called autism, right? Because they weren't connected or affirming enough. And it's like, all right, chill. So sometimes it's reparenting with some of my kiddos' parents and being like, hey, you did a good job. You love the kid. You know, I know you're not that close, but the kid's not close with a lot of people. Don't get nothing wrong with that. Well, I can't believe they talked to you. Well, they talked to me because I'm affirming, which is what Erik just said. He got on the kid and did what the kid wanted, right? That's affirming therapy. It's affirming childcare. I know a lot of people probably didn't agree with some of the stuff you were saying. Did you get any pushback from parents like, oh man, you're just caving too much for the kid, or you're smothering the kid, or you're being too nice?
It wasn't that, but there's certainly, so when we dismissed the ABA team, they were like, you know, as tactfully as they could say it, they thought we were making a big mistake. Yep. You know, there was a whole parent group that we got put in right when we got the diagnosis, and they were real ABA boosters. And they were just like, listen, you get your kid in the strictest ABA program, you do it 40 hours a week, and then, you know, and it's not going to be pretty to watch, but trust me, in a couple of years, you're going to be glad. So we had to then, you know, sort of extract ourselves from that group. I was just like, I'm not going to their picnic because I don't, you know, want to argue with them about it. We got dumped by the state, so everything had to come out of pocket.
Yep.
And so what I did at that point was I said, I kept them engaged because through the regional center, and I said to them, look, I understand, you know, that you've got this sort of system that isn't super flexible, but if I set this program up and we keep data like about milestones in the same way that we were doing with the ABA program, will you come out and look at my program? And, you know, if you think this isn't working, if you think this isn't valid, fine. But if it is, then we need a new route so that families can get funding who don't want to do ABA. And so they were like, okay, so we did that for about a year. We ran our own program, we kept our own data, and we kept having the regional center come out and look at our setup, look at our data, look at our son, look at the milestones. And eventually they said, okay, like we will fund 26 hours, a week of this therapy because, you know, and so that was important. Obviously, financially, it's incredibly expensive, but also paved the road for other families that may not have had the resources to sort of prototype, you know, a therapy approach. And so, you know, hopefully that was a little bit of something to push things in the direction of parent advocacy, because again, feel very strong about this. Like the parent knows best. You know, the parent knows their kid, and ultimately, whether the parent knows best or not, they should be empowered to be the ones to make these kinds of decisions for their kid.
Yeah. Preach.
Yeah. I just sometimes with the medical just system in general, sometimes it's just so Stone Age and backwards at times, right? Like in science, we always want to disprove. We always want to make sure that we're learning, keep on learning and being able to keep on rolling. But for some reason in like the medical field, we just stay back and we're like, no, trust us. We know exactly what we're doing. There's no changes in the way that people think about this certain topic. Why would that change? And it's kind of sad, right? Because then we get these doctors that think they know everything, but then turns out years later that they didn't know everything, right? And
Totally.
so, yeah. And so what would you say, like, what do you think would be like a good change for people in that field in your personal opinion?
Well, I do think that things are headed in the right direction. And even in the time since we were with my son, you know, play-based, child-centered therapies are only gaining more popularity, and the science is following. The science just lags a couple of decades behind the insight, right? I mean, that's how science works.
Yep.
Somebody has an insight, they have a hypothesis, then they decide to test it. So they do a study, they get a positive result, but there's some flaws in the study. So it takes time, it takes money. So hopefully that just continues to evolve. But I also think the other big change that's happened since we were going through the process is that you have the first generation of autistic self-advocates coming out of childhoods of various therapies or not therapies or late diagnosis or early diagnosis, who are speaking for themselves for the first time. And what's really interesting to watch is, because you've got this sort of Gen Z sort of like generation of autistic self-advocates, they decide, they're the ones who said, no, not person with autism. I'm autistic. I want to own that. So all the adults are like, oh, well, okay, if you want, and they're also saying, I'm not like, this isn't like a bad thing. Like, I like my autism. Like, don't try to cure me. Like and so as much as I think some of the sort of militant attitudes towards some of the therapies maybe is a bit much, I will say that I think that I love to see this generation owning the badge, saying we want to speak for ourselves, nothing about us without us, like being in the driver's seat to start to drive the conversation for themselves. I think that's a big change, and that's not something you could have planned or advocated for. That just happened because a generation, came up and was willing to be vocal about it. And I think it's part of this whole kind of I think just enlightenment about diversity. And I know woke gets a really bad reputation, but people have woken up to kind of, we live in this very multicolored, multicultural, diverse world, and that's a good thing. And people are allowed to speak for themselves now in a way that they weren't maybe 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So many intersections, Spence, right? It's all about intersectionality. I know a lot of people may hate that term. If they hate the woke term, they really hate intersectionality. And if you talk about where did that word come from feminist theory, from critical disability theory, oh, God forbid a black woman talk, God forbid she read a book. Jesus. But you're right, bro. I never heard that one, about us. What'd you say? It was about us without us?
Nothing about us without us.
Nothing. Where'd you hear that from?
I mean, it's big in the disability,
okay.
Like, Judy Heumann, maybe she coined it. I don't know. I'm probably not assigning it to the right person, but no, it's a big statement. And in the disability community is they don't want conversations around their disability to happen without their inclusion, right?
That's why a lot of people ended up hating Autism Speaks. It's because they wouldn't allow people that are autistic to work, to be on their board, right?
Totally.
And it was centered towards something else, towards the cure amount of other things. I'm not going to speak on it. A lot of people know about it. But yeah, for sure. And we take pride, me and Spencer, in making sure that we have a hella neurodiverse folks on the podcast, whether it be ADHD, autism, personality disorders, bipolar, whatever it is, learning disabilities. We've got some folks that can barely talk. We got some folks that don't shut the hell up.
We sure do. We sure do.
I won't.
Well, it's interesting just to dovetail on that.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I noticed a lot with this dad situation that we're talking about is that a lot of times it's not long after the son is diagnosed that the wife turns to her husband and goes, okay, there's something going on here. And for me, it was when my son got on ADD medications that I was like, and I saw like the change in him, and I was like revisiting my elementary school and middle school going, I think I might need to see a psychiatrist. And
there you go. Spider-Man meme.
It's the
Spider-Man meme
it's
right
the Spider-Man meme.
All right. Because the whoop whoop was also two fingers in the air.
Well,
but anyway, so I at age 40 went to a psychiatrist, and turns out I have all kinds of learning disabilities and processing issues and ADHD and all that stuff. And so, but it was like, so then I started to see, like, you see the roots of it in your kid, and you're like, you sort of re-understand your own childhood, because I'm Gen X. They're just like, oh, kick him to the Quonset hut after school. He's just slow. And so I took that in as just my identity. I was like, I'm frankly, I'm a little slow. And so it wasn't until I got to high school and I have to, the processing wasn't as important, and I got to pick more subjects that interested me, which for ADD is like, man, you get a subject that interests you, you're like off to the races. So it was like I found my stride, but I didn't know why that was. I didn't know until I was 40 that's why I was the way I was.
Facts.
When you found that out, did you change anything to make it a little bit easier on yourself going forward, or were you kind of like, I'm a little too far in my life to kind of change how I am now?
Well, I think part of it is that you have so many strategies that people call it masking now, but it's like, just strategies to navigate all the situations that you've learned to navigate to come across as, this together individual. And it's so, like, my psychiatrist, like, it was really hard to peel back all of that to even get a raw diagnosis, because there's so much strategizing going on. And so I went on medications and very much tried to treat it for a while. And then I realized, actually, I kind of liked some of that neurospiciness, I kind of liked that.
Yeah.
I was funnier when I wasn't on the medications. I wasn't as productive. My executive functioning was poor, but I felt like just net, I was more me without it. And so I just said, okay, I'm just going to do me. And obviously it's still very much, all the strategies that I use are still very much just a part of my personality, because, I've been doing it since I was 6 years old, but I'm more accepting of myself, and I find myself kind of embracing it a little bit more than I maybe did when I was in my 30s, and trying to fit in a little better.
There you go.
Man.
There you go. I forgot what I was laughing at, Spence. I was laughing at something when he said something, and I was like, this is funny. I end up playing in my head so much when people are talking. It's just a fucking circus act going on up there. Where the clowns come from? Jesus. You're right, man. That medication thing, for, long as it's not really hurting the executive functioning. I got clients that are like, you know what? And I don't think I need it. I'm like, okay. As long as we can pass the classes, as long as you can show up, get to work, love your partner. As long as you do that stuff, we don't need the med. But if it gets in the way, then we introduce a medicine, which we'll talk about later on. I was on medicine when I was a young pup. And then I was in the ABA school. So it wasn't like a therapy thing. It was like a special education for all of elementary. But I went to like a special ABA thing for a while. And it's pretty much just a prison. I mean, it's structured like a prison. It is a prison. It's all on these little Pavlovian type things to get you to act better. Did it help? Maybe. But as soon as you break free of that prison, then those rules don't apply anymore because they're not enforcing them. So you go back to the old shit. Also, there's depression and other stuff that was in there too. I appreciate what you just said, though, is because the Spider-Man thing, right, with me and Spence, I mean, we talk about all the time on the pod is a lot of women nowadays, right, seeing their kids getting diagnosed. And we know that women are vastly underdiagnosed, and they're like, holy cow, I'm autistic. I act like my child. And thus, if my child is autistic, then I must be autistic. And so that's starting this new discovery. We're looking at, there's not a lot of science yet on it, but we know that we partner with each other. Folks that are autistic usually partner with each other, or neurodivergent partner with each other. And so they're like, how did my kid get autistic? And you're looking at the dad, and I'm like, you need to be looking at both of you.
Yeah.
You're both eating Legos. So
Legos and chicken strips. My favorite.
Chicken strips, but chicken strips again. So I love that you brought that up, because you're right. So if you're Gen X and me and Spence are millennials, Millennials are just starting to walk into it too now in their late 20s, early 30s. It is the younger ones. So, right, like you said, the Gen Zers. Is it, what the hell is the Y? There's a Y? Who the hell is Gen Y?
No, it's Alpha.
Alpha? That's the young ones?
After Z, it goes Alpha. Yeah.
Alpha.
Oh,
Yeah, Alpha is like are the 10 to 15-year-olds now. Z is like 15 to 25, and then like 25 up is millennial, and then
there you go. So the Alpha is, Spencer, is who we're going to hate in a couple of years, and we're going to be. That's when we turn into Republicans. That's a joke.
Red,
Totally.
red.
Get off my porch.
Totally.
What?
Totally.
Why? I don't even have a porch.
Well, because by then you'll be well canceled. Trust me.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I know.
We gonna say some really dumb shit to them.
Yeah. Fucking kids. What do you identify as now? A turtle? Get the fuck out of here. Do not laugh at that.
Don't do it, Eric.
I had to say turtle because on Fortnite I'm a turtle. It's weird trying to explain Fortnite to other people that don't play Fortnite.
It's
like
true.
Running around killing people in a banana suit is kind of.
And then we dance. Over their dead bodies.
Autism. It's a wonderful thing. So before we kick it over to Spence for maybe like another question, and then we'll get out of here into the scenes. Is right. We talked about the new generation, like learning and teaching. I didn't realize that was a thing until we started a podcast, because I'm following all these autistic, neurodivergent, ADHD, AU ADHD. I'm like, holy shit, there's a massive community on here. And then we started inviting guests, Eric, therapists, a lot of therapists. And we're all like, are you autistic? So we noticed a lot of folks that are in the space of social media, TikTok or Instagram, a lot of neurodivergent individuals. I promise you, majority of them were autistic. So maybe it's because we're an autism focused pod that they agreed to come on, but we're talking profiles of like 200,000 all the way down to like 200. And a vast majority of them identified as being autistic, or me and Spencer helped them like, hey, I think this might be a thing. And some of the therapists like, holy shit, you changed my whole life. Like, this makes sense. I'm like, this has been magnificent of doing these podcasts and meeting and interacting. I've met me and Spencer met some really great people doing this now, which would have never happened at my job at Purdue University when you're siloed and no one even talks about autism. It's not mentioned. The doctors think I'm crazy. If I try to advocate, I'm just saying something stupid. I'm like, my dissertation's on this. Oh, we know what's best because we're medical doctors. Oh, you know a lot, sir. But also, don't pat me on the back and say, oh, let me guess now, is another ADHD autistic kid? Yeah. It's another ADHD autistic kid. That's why he needs medicine. I'm not sending you neurotypicals that are doing fine. I get really pissed off about this because like a couple of the doctors think like I'm some fucking tarot card reader or something. No knock to tarot card readers.
Yeah, don't you talk bad about them. They'll come and get you.
They're probably autistic too.
Grim Reaper. You're like, no!
Grim Reaper. Eggplant. I'm sorry. Spencer, questions or we can get moving?
So for your movie, this came out in 2019. Is there anything that you would change, kind of looking back now for this film?
Yeah, I mean, one of the limitations we had, just financially, because we made this thing for a shoestring, was geographical diversity. I mean, we included, we wanted community college, four-year college. We wanted, racial diversity. We wanted socioeconomic diversity. We could do all that. We couldn't get geographic diversity. So everything's in Southern California. We had wanted to, and I wished we could have had people from different parts of the country or even different parts of the world. And in fact, we are working on a follow-up film about autism in the workplace, and we're committed to having more geographic diversity and even international diversity for that, and also diversity in storytelling. So the Autism Goes to College was entirely professionally filmed and edited but we're doing a project where we're encouraging vloggers to do sort of day in the life vlogs about their work life with having autism, and featuring those. We started a TikTok channel this summer, and we're going to start to build more social media platforms. And so we want to have this sort of DIY element of people telling their own stories in more of a kind of social media kind of way that we haven't quite figured out how that's going to integrate into the larger film. Maybe it'll be sort of interstitials, maybe it'll stitch in chapters. I'm not really sure, but we do want to have that sort of, DIY element in the next film. Would have been nice to do that in Autism Goes to College, but we were learning as we were going, and we did the best we could. So
yep.
Of course.
There you go.
Of course. Awesome. Yeah, can't wait for that to come out. That's gonna be sounds like it's gonna be awesome.
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing we're going to change about it is with Autism Goes to College, we did all the filming over the course of a year and a half, and then we did all the editing, and then we came out with a movie. But this time, I want to release little chapters and elements as they come available. So what we did, we took the long form film of Autism Goes to College, and then we cut it up into pieces and made this online resource center where you can go, you can watch little snippets of the film, you can hear our podcast, you can read blogs. And so rather than do it that way, where we do a full film and then cut it into pieces, I thought, let's build a page on the back of Autism Goes to College that's beyond college, because that's the obvious next chapter is what happens after I graduate. And we'll start to populate it with stories, both DIY stories. So we already have one of the characters, one of the women from Autism Goes to College, Aniela. She's done a 4-part day in the life vlog of her life now working in LA. That's going to be one of the first things we publish there. And then Jasmine, one of the other young women from the documentary, I've gone out and filmed a couple of days with her in her new job as a junior engineer on a Caltrans project. So that's going to be a documentary episode that's going to go up first. So we're going to start to publish stuff as we make it. And then, 2 or 3 years down the road, we'll stitch it together into a feature film and release that. But along the way, we're gonna be building an audience and sharing what we're making as we're making it.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fuck yeah, it's dope. Quick question, two, and then we can get into the scenes. Your son, everything. How old is he now?
He's 20. He's in between sophomore and junior year of college. He goes to Southern Oregon University. He's actually my intern this summer. So he is helping us build out our TikTok channel because that's his world. And so, so we picked Southern Oregon University. They have a great add-on program called UCAM, where he gets a success coach who's been really game changer for him. That's a very small school, under 5,000 undergrad. So socially, it's his speed,
doable,
and he's really found his groove there. Doing great. Had a girlfriend for more than a year there. His first serious relationship was really good for him. He's headed off to Japan next month to do a semester in Japan. He's huge into anime and Japanese car culture.
Oh, yeah.
Of course.
So yeah. So he's going to Japan to do a semester in Okayama, and he's going with his buddy from college, and so he's doing great. He's crushing it.
There you go. Oh, remember he's autistic, so he's not supposed to be happy or be in relationships or drive a car, do well. God forbid have children, right? I mean, don't procreate. That's magnificent. I was all sarcasm.
The funny thing too, the funny thing too about his diagnosis is, so he got his diagnosis really young, and it was a thing for him when he was in high school and trying to fit in. He just didn't like to talk about it, and so I obviously made a movie about it. But since he's been old enough, I tried to wipe the movie off the face of the internet for him, because I want him to be able to tell his own story and disclose if he wants and not if he doesn't. And so he's now at college, and all these people in his social circle are self-diagnosing. They're all autistic, according to them, right?
Well, yeah,
my son's the one person, right? Well, but these are all people that don't have the sort of childhood story of diagnosis. It's just it's trending on campus. I'll put it that way. But my son is still just like he's mum's the word. He doesn't disclose to people. He doesn't talk about it. He's just kind of does his thing. And everybody around him is like, oh yeah, no, I'm autistic. And he's like, okay, all right, cool. Good for you.
Okay.
All right. I accept you.
I accept you. I have a movie about it. So how about that?
Would you like to eat these Legos together?
Yeah.
You were the eating of the Legos. Jeez.
I don't know why. I heard one comedian say it, and I just can't stop saying
You
it.
just keep it going.
I just keep it going. It's not a thing that we do. I remember being in elementary and watching the other kids eat paste. I'm like, you're a fucking idiot.
As you scarf down another
And then
Lego set.
And then you tasted it, and you're like, oh, maybe they were on.
This tastes like my dad's
Delicious.
drugs.
Sorry. All right. Jeez, too real. All right. All right. So let's talk about Autism Goes to College.
Let's do it.
All right. Let's get into it. So can you give us a little bit of a summary? What is this film about, Erik? What is it about?
I don't know.
If you couldn't figure it out by now.
Yeah. We sort of put the whole thing in the title, but for those that need a little expounding, it's 5 students on the autism spectrum over the course of 1 year of academic life, really trying to look at how it's going for them, how adulting is going for them, how semi-independence is going for them. And so we had one student at a junior college, one that had spent a long time at a junior college and then was at a 4-year. Actually, 3 of them had spent time at junior college, and then 2 that went straight to the 4-year university. And a good mix of different ways that their autism looks and that it affects their lives. And so we just really wanted. Normally, as a storyteller, as a filmmaker, I wouldn't try to profile 5 people in a movie that's just over an hour.
Yeah.
But one of the challenges with autism is it looks so different in each individual. And so if you do 1 or 2 or 3, you don't really get a sense of the broad scope of the various ways it can look and play out in college. And so for that reason, I went against my natural storytelling instincts and said, we're going to have 5 students, and actually 6 if you can count Alex Plank, who kind of dips in to tell a little bit of his story. But I feel like the benefit of that is you really get a sense of the breadth of the experience of students with autism, in college, navigating different, things, relationships, boyfriends, girlfriends, trouble with professors, getting accommodations, trying to be independent, figuring out bus systems, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we even had that we had another director on for the film Everybody Dance, which talks about people with disabilities, but a lot of people who have autism. And so they weren't really focusing just on like 2 or 3 people. They focused on like around that, like 5 or 6, something like that. And yeah, I mean, you get like a full scope onto just kind of the differences that people have and like what they're kind of dealing with at that time, especially their younger age also. Like they're probably around like maybe 5 to like maybe, I think the oldest was
13?
maybe like 17.
17
Was it
maybe?
13?
Yeah, I mean,
maybe
she
17
looked like high
or
school.
like 15,
High school,
maybe something
yeah.
around there.
Yep.
So yeah. But yeah, that's great. So did there any first started doing the film and you picked out like, okay, we're going to do junior college, university, all this stuff. Did you think that, did you have any expectations for the people from the different types of colleges that they were going to? Like, did you think like maybe, oh, you're going to like a university, maybe you'll be a little bit more high functioning and things like that? Or, your junior college, maybe, you're going to need a little bit more, face-to-face time with your professors and things like that. Were there any thoughts about that? And then after you filmed, were there anything you're like, oh, wow, that's interesting?
Not really in that way, but one of the challenges we had was finding subjects.
Okay.
Because there's so much concern around disclosure and things. And so we thought, I think we actually did take out an ad in the local newspaper in Riverside to try to find some students there. The problem is when you do that, you get the people that are like want to promote themselves. So it's like, we got this guy, I've got this, 12 sci-fi novels that are unpublished. So it's like, well, we're not really here to like, be your launching pad, So we had to comb through some people. And so it was more of just trying to find somebody who, again, reflected the diversity we wanted to reflect, wanted to be in the film, was relatively able to tell their story, or we felt like we could tell their story. Like, there was one participant, I won't name who it was, but who wouldn't let us talk to her parents, wouldn't let us film at her job, wouldn't let us, film in her home. And so we still told her story, but it was like we had to work around some of that stuff. And so we wanted to be careful when we select somebody that the other people in their lives are going to be willing to let a camera come in, and that the professors might let us film. So there was a lot of more logistical things that was around picking the students that we were going to profile. Actually, Guillermo was the first one we met. And I mean, Guillermo is such a character. We were like, we feel like we hit a home run with this guy. So then it was like, well, they got to be like Guillermo level, and that's not so easy to find.
No.
And then so we started out with Guillermo and Aniela because they were both at UCR. We found them through the Search Center, which was the sort of the nonprofit that funded us, where Dr. Jan Blatcher works. And then we were like, okay, well, now that's a UC. We need a state school, or we need a junior college. And then we found Caroline at Cal State Fullerton. She'd spent 8 years in junior college. We're like, okay, that's good, right? Because one of the things we wanted to highlight is, everybody thinks college is 4 years. Well, maybe it's not. Maybe it's 12 years. But if it's 12 years, who cares? As long as at the end of that journey, you wind up with your degree and you're off to the races. Like, why does it have to fit into this old school mode of 4 years at a 4-year university? So we loved her story for that reason. And so she when we got a little more funding, we went and filmed her. And then we had been pursuing Jonathan because we loved him, but he was very reluctant to be in the film. So we had been pursuing him. And finally, I think we offered him a gift card or something. He's like, okay, I'm in. It was like, if I had known that a $50 gift card was going to, move the needle, I would have gotten you a year and a half ago. But anyway, so we finally got him, and then we're like, okay, we like this because he's doing animation. But then we're like, we really need a junior college. So then we were hunting, and we finally found Jasmine out in Temecula, who was going to a junior college at the time. So it was more like trying to piece together who fits, and are we covering this base? And in terms of the functioning level, we did at one point think that maybe we didn't have somebody with sort of high enough support needs, but we couldn't really find somebody that had higher support needs that we could, work into the show. So now that we have the podcast, that's something where we're able to go, okay, we want to do a non-degree granting pathway. So we did that. We want to do vocational school. So we did that. We talked to, one of our guests was non-speaking, so he types to communicate. Graduated from UC Berkeley, 3.8 in poli-sci. Guest on our podcast. It was awesome. We were able to do that. So we have more flexibility in the podcast to bring in those other voices, different parts of the country, people international, people doing different pathways. So the podcast is where we're able to be more flexible. The film, there's so many logistical challenges. We just kind of had to find something that worked and run with it.
Facts. Man, you'd be surprised on how many of these professors themselves are autistic.
Well, that's what I was going to bring up too. And you talk about some of the rigidity in some of the professors unwilling to sort of like flex their teaching style. It's like, there might be some neurobiology behind that.
Yeah, man, anyone with a doctorate, I'm immediately sus. You get a doctorate or a PhD, it's a certain type of person that can do that.
Yeah.
To commit them. I mean, the dropout rate 75%. So to be on that 25% that actually finishes, you're going to be a little different. And it's just extremely interesting, and it's extremely toxic at the R1 institutions for like the professors, my students. It's R1 institutions, the big schools. It's fucking terrifying. So if you're autistic, undiagnosed, it's going to be extremely hard just trying to just do this on your own. If you're autistic, diagnosed with support services, you got a shot, but not the best shot, right? It's tough to finish college. Took me 7 years to do my undergrad, and I don't have many support needs. But now, right, I do the master's and the doctorate, and they still call me Dr. Nas. Right? Spencer won't fucking say it, but they still call me Dr. Nas, and it took me 11 years.
You pretty much force them to. You even put it on your gamer tag while we're playing. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, I'm just playing Fortnite with them. All of a sudden, I just see like Dr. Nas, another kill. I was like, what the hell? When did you change that? Oh, I just did, it matches with my Twitch and everything. So, I'm just trying to merge them together.
You just got to change it to Dr. Nah, N-A-H. Dr. Nah.
Nah.
Nah. Nah, nah, nah. Nah, nah, nah. Batman. Yeah, full autistic there. Yeah, man, I don't know. I worked hard for it, and I love how it sounds too, Dr. Nas. Just feels fun.
No, listen.
Yeah.
You gotta rock that.
Gotta rock it. I was at the military talking to the boys, young cadets, the other day. He said, "Not Dr. Oz. Who the hell's Dr. Oz?" Is Dr. Oz? Is he a medical doctor on TV? Something like that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, these young ass kids don't know who Dr. Oz is. But this first scene, man. Why'd you have us watch this intro scene?
Well, you get to see all 5 students, and you sort of set up their stories. It's pretty close, as close as I could get to a trailer to sort of tease the larger film. So I felt like it was a good jumping off point.
There you go. I like a good tease,
That's right.
Spencer's like, God damn it. Just go with it, man. Just go with it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, teasing. I just go blunt. I can't, I know. No subtlety here. All right. So let's get into the next scene.
There you go.
All right. So we have this young gentleman who has autism, right? And he's in this art class, right? And now he has this professor. And the great thing about this scene is that this professor, instead of just telling him to quiet down and to just go back to your seat, just act like everybody else, he's pretty much telling him, hey, I'm gonna actually incorporate this into the lesson. I'm going to make sure that you're heard rather than just shutting you up and leaving you like everybody else, which I think is a fantastic scene. Because we actually get to see somebody who understands that people with autism and things like that need some extra help, maybe extra care or just extra attention. That's just how it goes. What about this scene made you want to bring it to us, but then also just what'd you kind of feel about it? I mean, while filming and kind of afterwards as too.
Well, so I think that this issue is so relevant to autism in college. We had a hard time finding a professor who would come on and talk to us. I had a conversation with another one of Jonathan's professors, and he said, I'm not going to come on. Essentially said, I'm not going to come on because I'm going to get canceled. I said, well, why are you going to get canceled? He said, well, because I'm not actually a huge advocate for, just anybody with whatever support needs you have can just plunk down in my class, and I'm supposed to pull time and attention away from the rest of the class to address his needs. These people are paying tuition too. Now I'm over here dealing with, one kid out of 25 or 30. And I don't, and I said to him when I was having this conversation, I said, you can watch any of my movies, there's no black hats. I'm not going to make you the bad guy.
Yeah.
We actually want to hear your legitimate concerns, because there are some legitimate concerns about understanding limited resources, what demands you put on professors that don't have training in this. I mean, a lot of people think that, college professors went to school and learned how to be educators.
No,
they didn't.
No,
they just it's not like high school teachers. They don't have a degree in education. They just have a degree in whatever that thing that they're good at. They don't have any teaching practice. They don't get any training around that. So, so I think that's a conversation we want to have. And I really, really pressed this guy to come on, that I would treat him fairly and we would not paint him to be the bad guy. But he's like, what's in it for me? Like, I'm out. So we found Aubrey, who was a really good spokesperson because he's a department chair. So he has to listen to the professors that are coming to him with complaints about Jonathan specifically, but other neurodiverse students in general. And he has to balance those concerns and actually, so he was a kind of a good spokesperson because he's that rare professor who cares enough to take the time and has the kind of savvy and just people skills to sort of smooth that transition, let Jonathan speak in front of the class, let him have his outbursts. So he was great. And I think that we need to talk about that issue. We need to talk about how are we going to give professors the tools they need so that they can better provide an inclusive classroom environment for all students, regardless of their ability or disability. And that's a hard conversation to have. That's why I had another section in the film where it was animated, where I took we were literally like, how do we get this voice into the film? Because nobody will come on camera and talk to us. And I said, well, let's do an anonymous questionnaire to professors. They submit their quotes to us, and then we'll hire voiceover actors and animate, do animation. And that's what we did. So we had a little segment where it was real quotes from professors about students asking too many questions, sucking the oxygen out of the room, feeling like I don't have the training. And we were able to voice those things along with, these quotes, but not outing those professors, because I don't want to shame them into the shadows. I want to invite them into the conversation. I want to hear their concerns. I want to validate their concerns, and then I want to address their concerns.
Spencer, I ain't got no problem shaming them. I'm joking. Y'all put baby in the corner.
Oh my God.
No, I'm with you, Eric. I mean, it's tough. Like you said, they're not trained educators. Their specialty is in chemistry, computer science, animation. It's not on how to work with like students. And in K through 12, overwhelmed. They're already social workers, teachers, nurses, case managers. They're too much. So then to add on disabilities is too much. And they're underpaid. But when you get these professors, you're right. They got responsibilities and everyone's paying. But there are some services. There are ways to maybe talk to these kids and affirm or validate or to work on some things. But, they're busy. I get it. And they're doing research. I get it. And I would add that at my universities I've been at, there's been a lot of people that have wanted education and that have sought me out. And I've done trainings in math departments. I've done trainings in chemistry departments and English departments. And, they always ask you, what do we do? When the kid's like wigging out or stimming, or the kid's rocking in the chair and the other kids are looking, what do we do when he freaks out and he starts hitting his head? And so there were some things that we went over, what to talk about, how to ask the student things before and after, how to maybe ask them to help them regulate themselves and to allow the stimming. Well, when's the appropriate time to intervene? Making sure you're not shaming the student in front of class. You got your kids. We always talk about the kids that raise their hand too much and talks too damn much. Always. But also, what about that neurodivergent autistic kid that never talks? What about that one that's always scared to join group? That one that never makes any eye contact, that's just in the corner doodling. And, they don't get much attention either. And I'm like, you making sure you connecting with that kid?
Yeah. I would say to me, there's so much low hanging fruit that what I find really frustrating is that some really simple solutions aren't being implemented. I mean, how hard is it to put on the syllabus in bright, bold letters at the top, if you have a disability, you're welcome here. Please come and tell me, or let me know what your accommodations are, or here's the number to the disability services office. Make sure you get your accommodations because I want you to succeed in my class. Like just something inviting to just say, like, I'm open. And if you have needs, I want to meet them. Like, how hard is that? It's literally, you type it, it doesn't take your time. It doesn't take your resources. And it just opens the door in a way, how hard is it if a kid is raising their hand every 5 seconds to say, listen, I know you got a ton of questions. I want to answer them all. How about I'll stay after class and you bring all your questions to me then, just so that we're not interrupting the flow of the lecture. But I'm happy to, come to my office hours. I mean, how hard is it to just have a simple solution to a simple problem? Why does it have to be a behavioral problem? Why does it have to be like barging into their disabilities to say he's interrupting the flow? I mean, to me, it's like there's some real low hanging fruit here that's not being plucked, and that's what drives me crazy.
100. Yeah, 100. It's so many easy things that folks don't even fathom or try to integrate into the classroom. I've got professors that want to fail students because of attendance. Kids too anxious to get out of his room. Straight A's on everything. Too anxious to get out of his room. We're going to fail him. Oh, come on now. You got me and the doctor signing letters that there's a legit disability. Well, I've got a policy. Disability said they're cool with it. Kid can't write. Right, and his hand cramping up and locking up, right, and the penmanship's terrible, but they're like, hey, you got to write these things, these formulas out. My kid's like, hey, I'll tell you the whole damn thing, but we need to do it verbally. Nope, needs to be written. I mean, I get, their thing is, hey, if I do it for one, I got to do it for a ton of them. Nah, man, because kids got written documentation.
Right. But also there was a professor that posted a TikTok that we reposted that said to that argument, he's like, I thought about that. And I thought, yeah, I don't care if you come to my class as long as you pass my test. So attendance is optional. I don't care if you need time and a half, I don't care how long it takes you to complete my test. I just want you to know the right answers. So everybody gets time and a half. Like, he went through all the the most common 3-4 accommodations that people were requesting. And he's like, that sounds reasonable to me. Everybody gets it. So, to the argument, like, well, if I do it for one, I got to do it for all. Well, maybe do it for all. What's the harm? Like, what are you actually after in your class? What are you actually after?
Well, we're babying these kids, and this is why China's beating us. I say that as a joke. This is what my fucking physiology professor told me at community college. If I'm not hard on you and make you miserable, this is what China's going to win. I'm like, bro, I can't even fucking spell this thing that you're trying to get me to learn.
Yeah.
I love the guy, but he was a miserable son of a bitch. And 100% autistic as hell. Autistic as hell. Genius. But some teachers are like, for real, man, they will not do universal design. You're right. Give them time and a half. You got some kids with auditory processing issues. So have your lectures recorded. Well,
that's the other thing he said. Yeah. How easy is it in this day and age to just record them all and just video them all, have them on a server where everybody can access them afterwards? How hard is that? Not that hard.
Not that hard. It's going to lower attendance. Well, if the kids don't go, they don't go. That's on them. Yeah. If they fail, they fail.
Again, what are you after? Are you after that they learn the concepts you're teaching? Then the test will tell you that. Whether they're in your class or not in your class, like, what are you after? They have perfect attendance, but they didn't learn anything. Like, that's your goal? Like, that doesn't make sense to me.
Makes no sense. For the teachers that are awesome that I work with, they want to help and they're showing up, but they're burnt out because now they're advocators too. And so now they're playing this social justice warrior as I am, and then they're trying to change minds, and it's hard. It comes back to this thing, and our podcast is, pretty progressive. But just because you help folks, right, doesn't mean that you're giving less to someone else. Right? Everyone's like comes from this like privileged thing. Well, if I give you more of the pie, there ain't gonna be no pie for me. Like, there's plenty of pie. We're all gonna be fat and happy. It's America. We're all diabetic, I'm joking. And like, I look at these teachers and I'm like, you can do this. You're not going to harm the other students. Matter of fact, most of the students don't even want to go to disability services because they're ashamed and guilty, and they think that they don't need it when actually they do need it. No one's taking advantage of these services because they're taking advantage of it, right? They all need these services. And so I do my best to make sure that the teachers are being inviting, that they're advocating, and they're making sure that, these more privileged professors right? Because that's what I'm trying to talk about is this privilege where they don't understand you. You might not have been in the situation where you at right now unless you kid, right? You might have been on the other side of the fence. Probably not because you seem like a good dude, but you might have been on the other side. But since now you have this empathy, this lived experience, now you're like, holy shit, I wish I would have known this before.
Yeah.
I think that's the big issue is a lot of people don't have any lived experience. And so they live in this ignorance. They live in this ignorance and it harms other students. It harms other students. The boy, real quick, the boy, what did he do with his animation stuff? Did he do anything, go anywhere?
Yeah, so he's not animating, but he's one of his, as you saw in the movie, one of his endearing passions is Disney. So after college, he was like, I want to work for Disney, and Disney had a internship program. It was actually a college internship program, but he was already a graduate in Orlando. So his mom, who's in Southern California, his sisters somewhere in the Midwest, were both like, Jonathan, you're not going to Orlando by yourself. He's like, I'm going to Orlando by myself. So he goes. And he gets in the internship program, and Jonathan's outburst problem is against himself. When he feels like he's messed up, he berates himself in public. Well, you can't do that in the middle of Disney.
No.
And he did. And he sort of berated himself, had an outburst, and so he got dropped from the program. But Jonathan was not going to give up on his dream. So Jonathan got a job at like a gas and slurp somewhere off the freeway, was in like kind of like a halfway house kind of residential motel for a while with some sketchy people. But figuring it out, like waiting until the new cycle of the internship so he could reapply, got himself a job, got himself a place to live, navigated that whole situation with a new roommate who was, doing some wacky stuff. Got into the internship program again, completed it, and then was like, I still didn't get a job at Disney out of it, but managed to get a job at in food service at Universal Studios. But he wanted something more creative, so that was a part-time job. He wound up getting a second part-time job at Universal Studios as one of the photographers that photographs people coming in the parks, So that's what he's doing right now. He's got the best part. He moved into a retirement community. So he found a mom and a son an elderly woman and her son who lived in a retirement community. They had a spare bedroom, and he's renting that bedroom. So he lives in a retirement community, and he's working 2 jobs at Universal Studios. Doesn't drive yet, but that's next on his goal list. Man, I gotta say, you gotta hand it to this guy.
Grinder.
Talk about perseverance. Talk about sticking with it. Talk about taking failure on the chin, picking himself up, trying again. When plan A and plan B and plan C didn't work, he's doing plan D until he can get back into plan C. I mean, this guy is so impressive to me. I just love Jonathan. I call him every couple months just to check in on him, and he's just a delight. I'm a huge fan.
Yeah, he gets into that. He gets into that downward spiral when he gets self-hating, when he messes up because of the shame, and then that echolalia probably picks up, and then the voice might pick up, mannerisms might pick up. Yeah, I got some students like that.
Yeah, he had the same problem at Cal State Long Beach where he was berating himself in a hallway, and a professor saw it and was concerned for his safety, and so reported him to DSS, which turned out, like Guillermo, to be a blessing in disguise because he started to get help. But that's how he goes off the rails when it happens, is he internalizes some judgment and goes off on himself a bit.
Yeah, and the same thing that a neurotypical individual will do. This one's just a little bit more heightened of a response, right? And so
and more vocal.
More vocal. Right? He's externalizing the internal thoughts,
and it doesn't even know he's doing it. He doesn't know that he's doing it out loud.
Subconscious.
He thinks he's doing what all of us do, which is but to yourself. But he's doing it out loud.
Oh, I've been there, man. I wrecked my car the other day. Immediately, you stupid son of a bitch. And I'm like, damn, I said that out loud.
Don't worry, folks.
Yeah.
I'm a doctor.
No, I felt like, oh my God. I feel like homeboy from Liar Liar. Do you mind? I'm kicking my own ass.
Oh, Jim Carrey. What a hoot. What a hoot.
Talk about autism.
Oh.
Yeah, don't tell him that. He'd probably freak out. He thinks it's all caused by vaccines. So, bastard. Loved him until I heard that. So the boy, this professor was talking about, Spence at the end there. If you caught that, he talked about like, hey, would it be better if maybe he disclosed early on? So way people didn't, look at him weird, right? Because they're like, oh, people get empathy now. They're like, oh, that's what's going on, right? He's not just some asshole.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts on that? Because I don't think he should out himself, the kid, in the beginning of class. But then again, it would maybe help. But then it's up to the kid. But then they don't want to held against him. But technically, the kid helped them. I think that was a magnificent thing I don't necessarily know if you have opinions on it, but I think that was a magnificent clip to have, because I think that's the conundrum for all of us that are scared to self-disclose, but we know it could help.
Well, and I think that that's one of the things that's changing with this sort of new level of almost like trendy to be autistic kind of thing, is it's more acceptable to say, this is how I am, and sort of like let people kind of meet you there, versus don't say anything to the professor or the class, have the professor being like, what's up with this kid, keeps, eating in my class, raises his hand and yelling things out. Like, is he, and then the rest of the class going, okay, I don't want to sit next to this guy.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's more like, hey, let me just say, like, I'm sorry if I do A, B, and C. I'm autistic and I'll do the best I can. Apologize. Like, people are going to be way more sympathetic, but that's a big ask. That's a big ask for a kid who's maybe trying to reinvent himself. A lot of these kids had a rough go in high school. And so this is their chance at a fresh start. And maybe they've been in doing therapies and things where they feel like, I'm at a place where maybe now I don't have to disclose. Maybe nobody will know. Maybe I could sort of scoot by. Maybe I'm trying to join a fraternity or something, and I want to be cool, and I don't want, people thinking I'm weird. And so I totally understand. I mean, my son's a classic example. He doesn't talk about it. He's like, he just wants to be accepted as who he is, and he doesn't talk about it, and respect to that. But, to the extent that people know anyway, then they're just kind of like, oh, that dude, do you think there's something, and it's like, maybe it's better if they just come clean about it. Like, hey, man, this is me. This is how I am. So it's not something that you can't solve it, because it's totally understandable why people wouldn't disclose. And yet, in many cases, I think it's probably better for everybody if they know. But what do you do?
Yeah. And I think also with that, it's tough. It's like, because you could go like, well, maybe they should be telling like the professor in private to like let them know about that. But then also, like you were talking about before, then you also have these other professors who are like, I don't believe in that. I don't care. I don't care. No matter what, you're not going to get it easy or whatever. And then it becomes something that they even hide even more, maybe, because
Totally.
now they don't have somebody who is supposed to be leading this class as somebody that they can trust. And then it's like, why do I even want to go to that class?
Traumatizing.
If I can't even trust you, right?
Yeah. Listen, I never talked to a single professor my entire college career. I was terrified of professors. And I wasn't asking for accommodations. I was just like, by the way, not super welcoming, standing up there in front of a lecture hall of 500, being all authoritarian. Like, again, I think it's low hanging fruit for professors to say just something friendly at the beginning, to say, this is a big class. There's a lot of you. I'm sure there's people out there with, different needs, whatever. Like, just open communication channel. I welcome you to come talk to me in private. Let me know what's going on with you. Let's see what we can work out. It's not that hard. But, I mean, if the fact that I didn't talk to any college professors, I certainly don't expect a kid with an anxiety disorder to do it.
Yep. No, for real. Yeah, man. Shit. Chat GPT is probably going to end up killing us. It's a matter of
I'm
time.
next to it, so
Yeah, it's probably going to turn my microphone into a bot, but
a transformer.
A transformer. But it is magnificent for me having students write in therapy emails to their professors. Okay, I need you to use voice to text. We ain't even got to type the damn thing. Voice to text, put it in ChatGPT, let it spit out a formal email, send. It takes away all the terrifying, like disabling stuff. And now we can start asking for things, office hours, accommodations, when's the paper due, questions. So yeah, there's so many things to help students talk to teachers, but also there's 50 times more barriers. When you're anxious, executive functioning, all that other stuff.
Yeah.
College is a complicated thing, man. So recently I've been more formal. Well, I think I'm 34 now. I don't know, 34, 33, something like that. COVID and fucked everything up. I don't know my age. And I've been recently telling people in engagements on campus and other places, right? Hey, by the way, I'm going to be pacing and walking around, and I'll make direct eye contact, but I'm going to have some fun and walk around and talk some shit. And by the way, I'm autistic as hell. Whatever you think that means, you can go with it. I'll do a little bit of education at the end. Let's buckle in. Let's talk about mental health and anxiety on this campus, suicidality on this campus. And students are like, oh, I like to say that right at the beginning now. She's like, oh, so this guy is autistic, but he looks normal. He talks normal. He's a therapist. A brown male therapist. Unheard of. That's unheard of. And so that's my little bit of advocacy just by self-disclosing immediately. Because you can see it change minds. And then what happens right after that? I'll get a couple emails, Spence. So, you got any free time to see any more students that I think I might be autistic too? Thought it was really cool, your lecture today. I love that bit of self-disclosing because it's healing. As we know, representation matters. And so earlier, Erik, you talked about a lot of people aren't funding these autism things. True. And that's technically not true. They've been funding autism stories or autistic stories or neurodivergent stories for years, but they never called it that. It's a lot of autistic writers that are writing these coded characters, we call it coded. I'm like,
sure,
bro, this is autism, but like no one wants to say it's autism. And that hurts because we could have had a lot of representation and healing for years. And all these different cartoons and all that, man. So nowadays we're getting representation. There's movies and shows where like, okay, this kid is legit autistic. And we're saying he's autistic. But bro, there's so many coded movies and shows that we cover. I mean, my God, most of the things that we cover, there's always an autistic coded character. Always. And I love it. So they don't fund it, but they have been funding it. And nowadays there's more funding towards it because, right, I don't like saying it's trendy, but it's more prevalent. 20 years ago, we're talking like 1 in 250 kids diagnosed autistic, 1 in 100, 1 in 66 before the pandemic. Then it was 1 in 44 during the pandemic. Now it's 1 in 36 are diagnosed. The real number is probably 1 in 20. When we're actually talking about like folks like me getting diagnosed, Spencer getting that, 1 in 20. Might be less than that. So these stories, Erik, they're going to happen. So you're in the forefront of doing it. 2008. Shit's about to happen. It has to happen because we're the ones writing the stories. We're the ones that are the musicians, the creators, the artists, the TikTokers, right? The magicians, the magical people. Let's not forget our athletes that are like Hall of Famers that are 100% autistic as hell. Yeah. I always say, you're an LA guy. Kawhi Leonard, he's autistic. What was his nickname? Not the robot. What was his nickname? God,
wasn't it? What?
It's some type of robot. Cyborg.
Cyborg. I never heard of that.
They call him.
Heard that.
Yeah, they call him the Cyborg.
They called him Cyborg.
Yep.
All right. Well, he's a robot. So
that's just one. I'm pretty sure Derrick Rose is too. A lot of other folks are, but besides the point. I love that we started to get more representation. That's why I loved your movie, right? Documentary. Quick story here, Erik, and then we'll get to the next scene. So I told you, right? One of my homegirls, social workers, said, "Let's do some diversity stuff. I want you to like talk." I said, "I'll talk." She said, "You know any movies?" documentaries, not movies, like documentaries. I said, I don't know any. I really don't. And then I got shit to do. I'm busy, right? So I didn't send her anything. She finds your thing. She refers it to the diversity office in our office. They said, now what's they got to do with therapy on the college campus? She says, called Autism Goes to College. Well, like, why do we need to like show this as a therapy office? She's like, are you shitting me? Like, do you know how many autistic we work with as STEM students at this school? So she pushed and she pushed and she did it. And then, of course, guess who was the number one hitter there, asking all the questions and talking the most shit? Me. And people were like, wow. And now they're like, hey, could you do some seminars for us in like other places in the university?
That's great.
I've been here for 4 fucking years. I've been telling you guys about autism for 4 years. I love my homegirl. Shout out to Jennifer Justice. She's a real one. Making sure that we get our representation, because they wouldn't listen to me, but she did push and they listened to her. Magnificent social worker and woman. But it's crazy that they think it's not a thing. And I'll do this real quick. The intersections of autism are literally in everything when it comes to mental health. We have higher rates than the Gen Pop of anxiety, OCD, borderline personality disorder, bipolar disorder. You're talking about a high rate of folks that identify as queer, LGBTQ. We're not diverse, though. What do we need to learn about that? Folks that are trans, 80% of them identify as being autistic, right? We're looking at these things when it comes to all these different disorders. ADHD, right? We have higher rates of ADHD and attention-related issues, processing issues. What's that got to do with diversity? I'm like, literally, it intersects with everything. If you learn about an autistic individual and the diaspora of all the things that they deal with, it will help you better understand your clients that only deal with anxiety. You will learn regulation skills and DBT skills, grounding skills, better if you're working with a client that deregulates about random things, sensory things, not just, holy shit, I'm anxious to talk to my professor. Like, holy shit, I'm anxious to leave my room and do the 50 things to even get to talk to my professor. So I keep pushing this. To work with autistic folks is to be knowledgeable in almost every realm there is in mental health, because it intersects with everything.
Totally. Yeah.
That sell is extremely hard, and I have no idea why. And I literally get mad, and then I just fucking quit and give up. And Spencer just knows I quietly quit when I don't think, and I shouldn't do that as a man, a large man. When I talk, people listen because they're like, holy shit. But it gets tiring, and my privilege kicks in. I'm like, fuck it. You know, you guys do what you want to do. I'm gonna work with my clients that are autistic, and then y'all can get lost.
This is one of the reasons why I actually think that the introduction of neurodiversity, sort of not replacing autism, but kind of as a sort of umbrella term, is really useful. Because when people hear autism, they think, oh, this is a siloed thing, right? It's over here, and then we've got all these other things over here. But when you talk about neurodiversity, what you're talking about is sort of, you know, I always think of like the human like sensory system is kind of like on a stereo. You know, you have like the different like EQs, you know, like you like the treble and the bass, and then, you know, so it's like 9 levers, and they're all kind of like, everybody likes their sound a little different, you know, like whatever, however your 9 levers are set is like your sensory profile, right? Now you take that on any person, and depending on how that is set, it's going to tell you, are they the kid out there playing sports? Are they in the library reading a book? Are they the one with a social butterfly flying around? Or are they somebody who has no friends or one friend? Are they somebody who likes to go to a loud concert? Are they somebody who needs noise canceling headphones? Like, it's going to tell you so much about their personality. And then you can extrapolate from that when they're feeling anxiety, why they're feeling anxiety. It's probably something about how they're calibrated, right? So it's like all that intersectionality comes out when you start talking about the sensory system and neurodiversity that gets lost when you have this sort of like autism and then everything else conversation.
Nazir, this is when people that are above me, Nazir, I'm like, call me Dr. Nas, motherfucker. Nazir, I'm like, okay, I'm big. When we leave this office, I'm gonna beat your ass. I'm sorry, Spence. I have to be ghetto sometimes. They'll say Nazir,
I get it,
but it's just an anxiety disorder. It's just a sensory processing disorder. I'm like, yes, and yes. Add about 50 other things, the entire biopsychosocial that I did, the genetic history of the family. and all the other learning disabilities, what do you get? What do you get? You get autism. It's not just the one thing that we're diagnosing, boss. It's all of it. But it's just the one thing. All right. You gonna get my kid to medicine? No? Okay, I'm gonna go find a doctor that will. Cool. Got it. Dude, I get so mad. And some of these doctors are my boys, but like, oh, okay, you're not gonna help me out? I will go find someone to help me out. Real quick. Spence, I'm not the favorite. Spencer knows in my department because things. This guy from the dean of students. So the dean of students has all the big cases like this, the BIT team behavioral intervention, kids getting kicked out for, behaviors, drugs, alcohol, learning disabilities, all types of stuff. And I asked him a question and he said, Nas, he looks at me in front of the entire staff, all my bosses. Nas is the biggest hustler in this entire room. I've had more people work with Nas and stay in school than anyone else that I've ever talked to in CAPS in 4 years. You talking about me?
God, that's exactly why I know I can tell you shit. Anything good, you're just like, well, let me tell you something. Dr. Nas over here. Capital DR, let me tell you.
Straight up love this man. Shout out to Stephen Yeagley. Help me keep more students that are autistic in this goddamn school. It's magnificent. And specifically, Black and brown students, Spence, that they keep trying to kick out for some bull stuff. And I'll be like, hey, Stephen, what do I need to say in this letter to make sure that they stay in school? He said, call me. I said, okay, because we can't write this down. And then we make sure I write this letter perfectly.
Right.
When you're working with folks, man, it's about building relationships. For anyone working in higher ed, Eric, if you talk to them, it's about relationships. Because you can't just depend on me. It's like a whole team. So anyone listening to the podcast, remember that if your children are in college, if you're going to college, make sure that their person is connected with other people. Because you can't get this shit done in life without having a squad. Hopefully that makes sense to everyone listening. I forgot about that one. Every once in a while, I get complimented.
Every once in a while.
Hey, he said, Nas is about the different, what'd you say, the treble and the bass? I said, I'm all about the bass. Let's get to the last
like the hits from the 90s around here.
I'm trying to tell you, boy.
That's all we know. It's 90s. We don't go any type of forward. Last movie I watched was Blank Man with Damon Wayans. That was it. That was it.
I know. When he said he likes the mask and he said he's putting on all the personalities, I'm like, bro, you'd be a good Robert Downey Jr. and when he plays Black
Tropic Thunder.
Welcome to being autistic and being out of place.
All right. So next scene. Now we're talking about Guillermo. He was having a tough time with his professor. Very rude professor. Pretty much came in and said, like, I don't give a fuck if you have disabilities or not. That's what you said. What? And you're not getting extra help or anything like that, whatever. And then so now he's taking a test, fails that test. And then now you take on also the social aspect of now you have like him pretty much being bullied in school and everything like that. And then everything, like he says, now he's like this barrel full of like, or a keg full of gunpowder.
Powder keg, yeah.
There it is. And he keeps on, every time the fuse just keeps getting shorter and shorter until finally blows up. And then he talks about, I will shoot you, which on college or pretty much any type of school or anywhere, if you talk about it, you're going to get in trouble.
Yeah.
Right. And so, because he wanted to say that because it was the worst thing that you could say to somebody and then they would leave him alone. Right. It was a mass threat, but at the same time, as a university or even like just a school in general, you kind of have to take that seriously, as they were talking about. So let's talk about this first part. What about this first part did you want to talk about? And also, what about Guillermo really stood out to you?
So this was a story that we learned about pretty early on, but we didn't have it on We didn't have anybody talk about it on camera. And I think I interviewed Maria Keller, the Disability Services Office woman, and she wouldn't talk about it because she said, I'm not gonna talk on camera about this incident. So we wanted to talk to Guillermo about it, but he was obviously had some reservations about it as well. It's a chapter he didn't really want to revisit.
Yep.
So it was a little bit of a negotiation to get him to talk about it. But I went out by myself instead of like with a camera crew. I just went by myself with my camera, and I just, hung out with him for a day. And he was like, I'm ready to tell the story. So it was in that setting with just me and a camera where I got him to tell his side of the story. And then he gave permission to Maria Keller to tell sort of the school side of the story, and we talked to his mom about it. So it was really important to us that we include this in the film because it is such a timely and important sort of pinch point between students with his profile on campuses with what's going on in the world and school shootings. This is where the rubber meets the road. To Dr. Naz's point, this is where the rubber meets the road on how good the communication is between the disability office, that student, their family, the professor, and the conduct office, which is going to deal with behaviors. And it's a testament to Maria and the disability office and how well they knew Guillermo, and to Guillermo that he ran there right away after the fact. Yep. And the relationship that the disability office had with conduct, that they could say, we know this kid, we understand the gravity, but we know he's not a threat. Let's work with this situation. And the professor that allowed Guillermo to take the class online, this is before COVID, so online wasn't really a thing, allowed him to take the class remotely so that the other student felt safe coming back to class, not having the kid who threatened to shoot him in the class. But they could both stay in school and finish the class and move on. And so it was a really bad situation. It could have been much, much worse. The police were called. He could have been expelled. It would have been understandable that he would have been expelled.
Yep.
Could have been arrested. Instead, he got to stay in the class online. He got help. He got medication. That was what prompted him finally to see a psychiatrist and get on medication to help him with that, which was pretty transformative to him. And I just feel like it's such a critical story to tell. And because it was handled the right way, we had a good outcome. And that's a model that I think other places can use to follow. And again, the whole point of this movie is to be a conversation starter. So we want people to be having this conversation on campuses before things like this happen, so that we can have more good outcomes.
Yeah. Get connected with kids or have them connected to someone, whether it be their RA in their dorms, their teachers assistant, disability center. There's so many touch points where professionals and staff members could be talking to kids, making contacts, campus ministry, whatever it is. That way they could always be there to advocate for the kid, or they can be a shoulder to lean on, right? I mean, as one of the folks said, one of the young men said, right, I want to be far enough away from my family, but not too far away. That way if shit goes sideways, they can come or I can go there. And facts.
Yeah, that was Alex Plank had a couple of money quotes, and that was one of them. The perfect distance from home. It's too far for a popover, but close enough to get in trouble. They can come
100%, man. And so I see this young boy, Spence, and I think about all the times I've deregulated and freaked out and said I'd kill you, right? Because I'm just used to growing up in the type of environment where violence is a tool. And so, okay, we're going to fight. I might get my ass kicked in high school, but we're going to fight and you're going to have to kill me. So that's just the vibe. And then as you get older and bigger, right, things happen. I get angry. And the thing that makes me angry is people I love with a sad face or being hurt or losing at something. And then, one day some derogatory stuff was said, as people know on the podcast, as what folks do. They say racial things. And I looked at my best friend at the time, still a good friend of mine, best friend. And I looked at Mike, looked at my other boy. I said, okay. So I did something stupid, hurt someone. I said a lot of horrible things after that. I'm going to take your life. I'm going to do this, this, and that. Big bad wolf. Everyone's freaking out, arrested, expelled, right? Then comes the depression, the shame. I was put in jail. Thankfully, the kid didn't show up to court. And extremely suicidal after that. Like, because I just fucked everything up. Because I deregulated, because that little trigger, I only got one real big trigger. And that's if I get overstimulated, if you keep fucking with me over and over and over and I tell you to stop, but that takes a long time, is when I see people I love hurting. And then I'm like, oh no. And so that big bad wolf comes out. And so I've been there. My brother's been there when he gets deregulated. I remember one time he was cutting grass and my pops was like, do this, cut here. And my brother couldn't figure it out and he got frustrated and then he flips his wig and right, I hope you die. My dad's like, okay, well, this went sideways. It happens. Yeah. Bruh, you should have seen my brother. Spencer wasn't there. You probably would have loved it. Spencer, you probably would have loved it.
I would have loved it.
You would have loved it. Well, he cussed out my best friend's wife, which, you know, we're not all really fans of her.
Oh, yeah.
Different reasons.
I definitely would have loved that. Not the pops thing. I would have loved
not
that.
Not the pops thing. No, you would have loved this when he cusses her out. And she's like, Salim, stop stepping on the stairs. Like, we're not watching wrestling. And then he walks upstairs. He's like, forget you. Because this is what we do together as a family. And then he runs upstairs and then she yells at him to not run up the stairs. He said, fuck that baby. He loves this baby. But he was like, fuck you, fuck that baby. This is on vacation in Tennessee. And I look at my boy, Colin. My Colin ain't going to say nothing. He loves me. He knows if he says something stupid about my brother, I'll probably throw him out the window. That's my best friend of 20 years. Yeah. His wife looks at me like, what are you going to do? I said, you shouldn't have told him to get off the WWE. After WWE, we could have had a blast. He came back down, apologized, right? He manned up after he regulated. But she pushed the wrong button and she knew better to run her mouth. You can't run your mouth to everybody, people. Certain people, you can't run your mouth.
You never mess with that one thing that people, especially that one thing that helps them regulate, like, all the time. That's like any of our trips that we're on.
Yep.
I know he's watched either wrestling, music, something like that, anything, or just a movie. Just a movie he downloads or something like that. You know not to mess with that.
And watch it with him.
And then, yeah. And that's what we did when we were on the trip. We watched it with him. Now, he turned the movie off. He was like, all right, I'm going to sleep. Yeah, all right, see it. I was like, why? Hey, man.
Mid-movie, he's like, I'm going to sleep. I'm like, we're all watching the movie.
Watching Big Daddy, man.
He's like, yeah, fuck you guys.
Anyway. Yeah, I know. Anyways, but yeah, it's one of those things, especially you don't mess with the thing that's going to help them regulate. And she knows that. She knew that. That's why I can't stand that person. But, you know, it's one of the things. But at the same time, it's just like it's somebody who you just need to get that empathy and understand that everybody's different and everybody has their own ways to kind of get away for like a moment. Let somebody get away for a moment. It's okay. They don't have to be part of every moment all the time. Especially those who are on the spectrum a little bit more than others, or, you know, anything like that. In different ways. And, you know, everybody has their own thing. And I'm not surprised that happened.
It happened. Hey, and my brother's not a bad guy, but it happens. Even with people that you love, not just these random ass kids. So that's why I wanted to share those stories. It could be random people. It could be your loved ones. And I mean, kids throw temper tantrums all the time with their parents and they'll hit them. I just wanted to bring light to that. As we talk about him, though, Erik, you know, the medication's awesome. I asked you about, you know, was he on an anxiety, depressive? You said you're not sure. So I would assume for him, definitely an anti-anxiety to help him lower that threshold of like frustration and internal turmoil. Could have been a mood stabilizer too that a lot of my clients will take if they're popping off pretty quickly, right? It helps them stay in like that middle space. And a lot of folks that are autistic, right? We have higher rates of using medication. There's nothing wrong with it. Nothing wrong with it. If you need it, right? If you need a prescription, me, Erik, Spence, you wear glasses or you got, you know, didn't you get surgery?
I got LASIK. So, yeah.
we all had a prescription for glasses at one time, right? But then everyone's like, oh, that's fine. But God forbid you need a prescription for like your mind. And I try to use that as an analogy to help my students understand, like, there's no shame with this. This is going to help. I'm glad he got the meds. I'm glad that he was able to function better. I'm glad that his life wasn't put in danger when they called the police. That's a horrible feeling if you're autistic and, you're deregulating, and then they put you in a car. Like, if they would have got me that day that I acted a fool, I probably would have got shot because I was gone.
Well, yeah, or just run out of fear.
Yep.
And then you get in real trouble.
Real trouble. Real trouble. And what we've seen in the media is there'll be therapists working with folks that are autistic, right? And police will get called, or maybe in the neighborhood, right? They've called the police on my brother just for walking in our neighborhood now. And I'm like, why you called him? Well, he was just, he just sits and stares. Who gives a shit if he's staring? He's not looking in your window. He's pitting and puttering and looking at his phone. But people will be like, hey, man, is your brother okay? I'm like, Jesus Christ. Why are you so fucking nosy? Are you racist because he's brown? I mean, what's going on here? But what we know is that our folks do have a higher rate of being hurt by and perpetrated of violence by officers. It's not to deal with because the officers, because they don't understand us.
Yeah.
And it's sad and it's scary. It's scary. I remember one time something happens. I don't know if I have permission to say all this. Something happened with my brother and his partner at the time. Breakup. Shit got weird. Slim said some things about himself, right? Police were called to protect my brother, right? Because he went internal. I come home. I'm like, holy, where's my brother? The officer's like, hey, we had to take your brother. I was like, holy shit. What's going on? Things can deregulate people for many different reasons, homie. I had a kid come in today, Spence, and she said that they broke up because she gets angry. And I said, homie, why are you angry? She said, I don't even know. I said, what's going on in life? Well, my mama got cancer and, and then I'm stressed out with school. I said, yep, I'll probably be angry as shit too. That's a lot. And then, you got some sensitivity issues. I said, it makes sense if you're lashing out. So now we're going to work on grounding techniques, blah, 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 a bunch of stuff to make sure they don't lash out on people that don't deserve it. It's a wonderful clip to help people understand that we're normally the victims of crime. We're normally the victims of violence, not always the perpetrators of violence, right? That's what people always think with psychiatric issues like schizophrenia, bipolar, like, oh man, they're gonna be your shooters. No. They're usually the ones getting victimized. Autistic folks, right? They got labels, right? And especially with a lot of gun violence that's been going on. They're like, oh, that kid's different. With that recent kid, the Trump guy, right? The Trump shooter guy. I don't know if you know, but his profile fits autistic. To me, he's definitely autistic.
Totally.
Kid's a genius on a bunch of different things, right? And all these different things in it, awkward, weird. People are like, I don't know. I'm like, God damn it. First thing I saw when I saw that is hopefully it's not a brown kid. And then the next thing was like, I hope to God it's not an autistic profile. And then when I saw it was like, God damn it. There's many different reasons why maybe that happened. I feel like his brain probably got polluted and sabotaged by people on the internet because the internet is a dangerous fucking place for autistic people at times. But not going to totally get into that. What is your opinion on, or maybe you don't have experience and then we can wrap up, is this thing, me and Spence were talking with his other therapist about suicidality and how a lot of therapists or a lot of folks will like hospitalize people immediately if they even mention the word like, hey, I'm thinking about like unaliving myself. So now you have this boy who like says this, pops off and says this thing. Do you think it's overreactive to make sure that we're protecting everyone? And you think that's what the stage that we're at? Or do you think that maybe we should get to see what's going on with the kid, assess the kid at individual? Or do you think that most people just hospitalize immediately? What do you think the solution is? Or what do you think that people are doing? And how can it be helped? Because complicated question there. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm really out of my depth on that. I mean,
You're good.
I wouldn't really know how to opine on that.
You are completely fine.
Okay. Yeah, no problem.
So I'll give you a couple case studies and then we'll have Spence wrap things up. I got a lot of kids that deregulate and say that they're going to harm themselves or harm someone else. And man, my professor, this happens, man. I swear to God, I'm kill myself. Kill my professor. Right? He looks at me. He's like, Nas. I remember this one boy, sweet as pie. Little shit. He's like, Nas, why'd you cancel on me last week? I'm like, what are you talking? I was sick. Oh, you canceled on me and I came here. I kill you. Like, bro, you can't be saying this shit. And I made an agreement. I said, you can talk about all the murderous things you want in my office, but as soon as you leave, you cannot mention this to anyone else because you got referred because you said something stupid to your teacher. I know I won't say it again. Whatever you want, you can say, I'm not going to get you in trouble. I'm not going to hospitalize you. I know that you're not going to hurt yourself or anyone else. I got to document it to make sure I'm protecting my ass. Fucking kid. Never said it again to anyone else. Magnificent. I got a bunch of other kids that they'll fill out these things or people will ask them, hey, how you doing? And my kids will be like, well, I don't want to lie to them. And they'll be like, sometimes I don't want to be alive. You don't have to tell your professor this in your meeting with your professor to go over just correct your homework and talk about that. Well, they asked me how I was doing. And then they sent you to the students and then they send you to me. Go ahead.
This is the counterpoint when you convince people with autism to disclose. And Alex Plank talks about this in his interview. I'm not sure it made it into the film, but he's like, I have to tell people, you don't have to disclose everything to everyone all at once. Right? If you just can't find your way to the building, you can just say, I'm lost. Can you help me find the building? You don't have to tell them your history of diagnosis, the medications you're on, it's like,
Professor, I need some help with these questions. Oh, okay. What do you got questions about? My sexuality. What?
So it started at the age of 6. Like, no,
right.
No.
Right, totally.
And that is the darndest thing. And I get it. They're mandated to make sure that they tell the dean of students. That way they can check in on the kid. And then they usually check in with CAPS to see like, hey, is this kid in treatment or not? And so I'll get the kids. I'm like, okay, so we need to work on who you talk to about what. And if there is some suicidality, then you come to me or these designated people that we've shown you to talk to that are safe, that aren't going to immediately report you, that are still like mentors or like other counselors. So it's a lot of navigating of who to disclose to, like you said. We've got this thing as therapists, which you may or may not know is we usually err on the side of caution. We think you're going to harm yourself or someone else.
Of course.
We got to make the report and like file it. We got to hospitalize you. But when you're talking to someone that's autistic, saying certain words doesn't mean that they have legit intent to harm themselves. You got a master's degree. You've been working for years. You should be able to discern, is that student a threat to themselves or do they just need to be regulated, have a treatment plan, have some resources, have some guidance. So now they're no longer like suicidal, passively suicidal, but sounds actively because they have support. Kids will leave my office. I'm like, are you good? Wait, you going to do anything weird tonight? I'm going to follow up with you tomorrow. I'm being sarcastic, but like that's literally what you're doing. Suicide prevention by treatment planning, by resources, by programming, like this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What are we going to do? I want you to repeat it back to me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, Nas. End of the session. What are we going to do? They have it in their head. This is the program. And that's how my mind works too. Some of my students get pissed off because like, Nas, you're repetitive. I'm repetitive so it sticks in your fucking brain. I'm repetitive because when the safety plan is needed, you'll remember what the safety plan is. I will save your life. They're like, oh, okay. So back to what Caitlin, we just had the podcast released, the therapist, is this restructuring how therapy is done when it comes to suicidality, homicidality, especially when talking to neurodivergent folks, is sitting and assessing instead of hospitalizing immediately. If you got to do it, do it. But you could traumatize them more. They might not talk and speak up anymore to anyone else because they know what's going to happen. So now they suffer in silence. Sometimes them psychiatric places are not the best places. Sometimes you're going to be in there with folks that are like severely mentally ill, or it's going to be a lot of like drug rehab stuff. And if you're sending a little white girl in there, all right, a little tiny kid in there, a 17-year-old in there with grown ass men, that is traumatizing. I have students going to inpatient therapy hospitalization therapy, and they're like, nah, it's holy shit. I will never tell anyone anything ever again. I'm like, well, what did we just do? So I wanted to speak on that when it comes to suicidality and also homicidality. There's a way to suss it out. It takes patience. It's just like the teachers you talked about, Erik. Are you providing better care? Are you actually showing up for the kid and being humanistic? Are you giving them a little bit extra time to say, oh, you said that one trigger word. Ah, shit. Call 911 on you. I'll call on the way, man.
Oh my God.
I'm sorry.
All right.
So that was my little spiel about that. I think we can do a better service to students or clients, be more specialized and be more attentive in those extremely sensitive areas. I'm gonna kick it to Spence to do the wrap up or ask you any questions. Erik, you got any sauce or anything? But yeah, I'll kick it to Spence.
Yeah. I mean, want to give us some plugs to what's happening next, to the podcast, to where people can find you?
Yeah, I mean, everything's on our website, which is autismgoestocollege.org. We've got an online resource center there. You can watch the bulk of the stories that are featured in the documentary. You can see there for free. You can read blogs about students blogging about their college experience. And you can get every episode, 36 episodes of our monthly podcast.
Okay.
Our award-winning podcast. We won a Webby Award for the podcast and the film. Gold Anthem Award for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. We're very proud of that. Nice. And then we're going to be building out this back page of that website for Beyond College, where you can start to see stories start to populate about autism in the workplace. So that's the hub of everything. Definitely, if you're a family with a high schooler or you're a current college kid with autism and you want tips, tricks, and hacks for navigating college, we hope that we can be of help. We're on social media. We're building our TikTok. The one thing that's unique about our TikTok is we're not just posting our original content, but we're trying to be a town square for the conversation already happening there from neurodivergent students. So we're reposting other people's, both professors, but students, everybody who's a stakeholder in that. So check us out there and follow us to get more.
What's your handles?
So autismgoestocollege.org on YouTube, it's Autism Goes to College. Instagram, it's at Autism Goes to College Movie.
Okay.
And TikTok is Autism Goes and the number 2 college.
Okay.
Nice.
Well, we're gonna make sure we add you, and then we're gonna start tagging you in some stuff. And
tag away.
I'm gonna push some students to maybe share their stories because I talk to like 90% autistic folks. So
well, no, I mean we're interested. We're always scouting current college students who will want to come on and tell their stories on our podcast. So please source us some podcast guests. We're especially looking for women and particularly women of color. We feel like we have a ton of white men that have come on our podcast. TikTok seems to be more female dominant, so we've been sourcing some guests from there, but we're always looking for that added diversity. So if you have anybody that fits that bill, please send them our way.
Yeah, I'll have them reach out or maybe do that vlog thing that you talked about and then tag it too. Hey man, I'm appreciative that you responded and because you emailed me back like legit within minutes, and I was like, holy shit.
But that's the ADD. If it had gone beyond 2 minutes, you would have never gotten an email.
Yeah.
Yay.
He emailed me back. I was like,
I either respond right away and I'll literally stop. I could be in the most important meeting and I'll still send that email up because if I don't, it's never happening.
Hey, I felt like I was special. I was the prettiest girl in the fucking room. I was like,
well, let me tell you, Mr. Linthorst, let me tell you.
I'm just so glad you responded.
My shipper robe.
Your email was like squirrel,
Oh, I'm glad it was. Man. We just did one with an awesome director, right? He just won like an Emmy out there in California. Then we meet with you. I'm trying to connect with this professor out in 90% sure it's South Florida. She's doing autism, but jujitsu and teaching jujitsu. It's a completely different thing, a little bit more masculine. Obviously, they're not kicking each other's ass the entire time, teaching a lot of other things.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get more educators and more directors, more storytellers than just like neurodivergent therapists and content creators. So like when I saw this thing, I was like, I got to reach out to you because I fucking loved it. So thank you.
Awesome.
Yes.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you once again. And we would love to have you back on, maybe even for, your next movie.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
For sure.
All right. Thank you, Erik, for coming on. And thank you, everybody, for watching. I'm Spencer. That's Nas, Different Spectrum Podcast.
All right, everyone. Much love. And remember, take care of yourselves.
Or don't.
Completely up to you. Peace.